Hello. You are listening to Dads with Startups, a podcast about a couple of entrepreneurs who put family first.
Cool.
Good afternoon, Kevin.
Good to see you, John. Good to see you. I have a
How's
question.
life? Sure.
This kind of came up a few days ago with my wife, my partner, and my wife, and it was about how are we putting family first by doing by doing this startup, or are we putting family last? And I was like, as I was listening to the intro there, I was like, that's a good reminder. What am I doing? There's times where I feel like I'm doing this because of the family, and times where I feel like I'm like sacrificing because of my sacrificing family time even these days. So I'm just curious what your thought on that is, and how do you kind of work out the two before we jump in?
That's a great question. I had lunch with a friend who works in the building where my office is today, and we pretty much had the same conversation. Let me start by asking you, is it easy for you to work? Or are you like, oh, I gotta work? You know what I mean?
I would say in general, it's easy. Like if I have a blank day, the first thing I think about is, let me get to work. Let me get down to the office, or let me open up the laptop and start going through stuff. Yeah. So that's probably I'd say more often than not, that's kind of my go-to. I remember going
I would imagine most entrepreneurs have that quality.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. For myself, I could easily and happily just work until 10 o'clock at night every night. I think if it wasn't for the other things that are happening in my life, I would probably just stay at the office and skip dinner and come home at 9 or 10 o'clock, grab a quick dinner and go to bed. I really enjoy it, and I'm self-motivated to just do more of it. And so, yeah, I have to remind myself. I don't really have the issue where I'm constantly overworking long hours, because my wife she would pretty much hold me.
She keeps you on track.
Give me a call. Yeah,
Nice.
Keeps me on track. But I do have that problem where it's easy to put work first and not family. So sometimes I have to remind myself, the reason I'm doing this is for greater freedom to be able to be with my family when I want to. The problem is, what that means is I set my own schedule, and usually if no serious plans are formed, then I just default work, like you said. Free time, pull out the laptop, do some work. Yeah. So what do you and your wife do to make sure that?
Well, that's interesting, because you mentioned your wife helps you keep you on track for that. I think it's harder in our case, because we're both partners 50-50. And she can be more of a workaholic than I can. So I think she tends to be even, like she'll spend all time working. And so before we had kids, it was like, that's all we did. We did a lot of that. I would actually be the one to pull her away and say, okay, let's go have fun, and let's go get a drink or something, a coffee type thing during the day. And so now with kids, I think what you said is very insightful, like or just kind of makes me think about how I started this company. I began all this, especially for kids, thinking like, oh, I want to create more time. I want, we need more income to be able to do that and just be able to relax more. But it's interesting how it can be a trap in its own way, because you can tell yourself that story and say, well, I'm doing this for the kids, crank up another 3 or 4 hours, when, it would be probably better to be home at dinner, right? Or go take them out to the park or something like that. And that's time where you're like, ooh, I want to be working right now. So it's going to be interesting. I was thinking the other day, the one thing I can say as I was talking to my wife about this, I said, well, if let's say we were to make $1 gazillion from this business, and hopefully we will, but let's say we were to do that, would that really benefit my children? Like, what's $1 gazillion going to do for them down the road? Like, it's not going to make them better people, right? Like, you hear about Bill Gates. I think he gives his children, like, the quote is like, just enough to be able to do whatever they want, but not enough to do it, like nothing or something. But so trust fund kids are not pleasant. I used to live around them when I lived in LA. On the other hand, what I think I didn't get from my parents that I'm hoping to give to them is a model of like someone who's able to do the things that they want and put dreams into action. And I think that is something that I didn't get to see from my parents. And so entrepreneurship has been a lot more hard for me because I had to learn how to do that first, and I had to learn that I could do that and overcome some barriers of questions about, can I actually pull this off? So that's been the one thing I can say, okay, my working actually will benefit them down the road because they're going to see a good model. But the money itself and all that stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, I know people who are young, who are retired, basically, and they don't really do much of anything all day.
Right.
And I wonder if their kids see that as the role model. Like, I can get by fine without hard work. So the hard work is beneficial. What motivates you when you have to sacrifice? I guess I should rephrase that. Not have to, but when you sacrifice time with your family and instead you work, what motivates you to do that? Is it out of fear of not making enough money, or is it some other motivation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's been times where it has been out of not making enough money. I remember when we first had our first child and I was like programming, and that was when I was making tons of plugins and trying a bunch of different stuff. So that was like, we need to make,
Right.
ends meet. So that was cool. And having a child helped with that. I think I actually will say my motivation and ambition level for business has shot up since having kids, which I thought was strange because before that we were living quite comfortably and we didn't have as much expenses, and we were, it was quite easy just to go and just live a pretty pleasant life with a mediocrely successful business. So I will say that I've been motivated more to achieve more because I feel like there's something now to work. I'm working for my family. At least that's the story I'm telling myself. And so that's been hugely motivating. But when it's moment to moment and I have to choose between family and work, that's a good question. Is it out of fear? I think it's a little bit of just kind of, there's a bit of drive to it where I just like, I have a lot of ideas. Sometimes I'll be at the park with my kid and I'm just like, oh, I want to get back to work right now and start working on this stuff. And so there's that too. So yeah, I think it's complicated a little bit, but I like what you said about the original dream of this is to have more time with my kids. I do dream about spending, doing long, maybe RVing around the country and having the time and income to be able to just kind of take off and do that for a few months, taking trips around the world with them when they get older. So that's stuff that right now I'm working so that in a few years, hopefully that'll be a reality. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think what motivates me to work, it's not for money. I've never really been somebody who's chased the money down. I've never really been. I have been, like you said, I have been financially strapped and had to work extra hours out of necessity. So I have had time periods where that was so. Right now, we're not in that situation, fortunately.
Nice.
But I could still work extra hours. I think what motivates me is it's sort of like a video game. The addictive elements of one of those games where you know how you start at level 1 and you level up to 2 and 3, you get better weapons or whatever. That type of a thing motivates me, and I think you could look at the business the same way, like leveling up the business, not to sound too cliche, but as that levels up, I get more addicted to improving the business. So it's sort of like, I don't want to see the business succeed more because then it'll make me more money. And it's not for fame either. I think it's just that addictive element of business where it's like, okay, we're overcoming some challenges and now look how much better the new feature is released, or getting more sales, or whatever that is. That motivates me a lot. And so yeah,
the ultimate video
anyway,
game. You're right.
if I could find a way to bring that element into family life, or see things that way, I guess maybe then family and life would become more addicting than work.
That would be even a higher level video game. Because I think with software products, the mysterious side of it, where it's hard to crack the code, is usually the marketing. But this, at least the nice thing about software is like you can put some code in and the result is there. You see it in the flesh. Whereas with children, you never know, like, are you going the right direction or wrong direction? The payoff is kind of years down the road with some of this stuff. And it's frustrating during the time. You might be doing the right thing and it's still very frustrating. And feels like you're a failure as a parent sometimes, even though you're doing all the correct stuff. So that would be another level. But I have one more thing though, is do you find that you have a shift in ambition from when you didn't have kids to when you guys began with your first child, or do you remember much about that era?
I mean, I wouldn't call myself an entrepreneur before kids. I was freelancing and I was working for myself, but there wasn't really anything to grow. It was just working for clients. I did, because those requirements were much smaller, I did take off a lot more time back then. My wife,
time off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. If my wife didn't have anything going on, I think in the early days of our marriage, she was working swing shifts. And so during the daytime, there were a lot of days where it's like, let's go do something. And we would just kind of get in the car and go wherever on a whim. And it was nice back then because I didn't have to answer to anybody as long as I got my projects done in time. So the circumstances were very different as well.
Yeah, I can relate to that. We did a lot of that too. But I do wonder, you don't sound like you were, there's freelancer, let's say, agencies out there, or people who are in the mindset to want to create a big agency. Let's say they start off as a freelancer doing web projects, and then they're like, I'm going to create the biggest agency in the world. I'm going to make this, $500,000 to $1 million a year and or more. And so that's that taste is, they will have that taste for that. It doesn't sound like that was strong.
I didn't have that at the time. Yeah, definitely not. I probably would now. But at the time, that's I think what makes more of an entrepreneur versus a freelancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a little risky to hire somebody, because then you had to not just fill your own time, but somebody else's time, and so on and so forth. And I think I just got comfortable doing work for people. And if my schedule was busy, I would generally just say, yeah, I can start on this in 2 months, And
right.
I did subcontract some types of work, but it wasn't really out of a motivation to widen my bandwidth. So
it does sound like your entrepreneurial journey kind of started when you were, and we talked about this before, but it started after kids. And I do wonder with that, because I can relate to my own experience. I went with my partner, and I were together for 7 years before we had our first child. And comfortable is that word you mentioned. I felt that quite a lot throughout. I mean, there were times where we had a little bit of, little downturns in the business, but I didn't have anyone I was trying to feed, and it was comfortable. We had a very comfortable life. And I look at some of my peers that don't have kids that are, my age, and some of them are entrepreneurs. Most of them are like freelancer entrepreneur types, and they all are very comfortable. And I also noticed there's kind of a correlation of like, they don't really do anything that's that uncomfortable, like starting a business. There's something very uncomfortable about a startup. Like, you have to kind of go through be willing to endure a lot of unpleasantness. And maybe I'm just kind of reflecting. I wonder if that part of that is also like, I have to pull this off in some way for the family. Like the family's counting on me. Maybe that's not really true, but that's sort of that old breadwinner kind of thing that maybe, you know, as you know, men, sometimes we have
Employees are the
that.
same as kids in that regard.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sure women have that
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't know what I always, I'm trying to figure that out because it's interesting. I can say my ambition level did go up with kids, and I just, you know, logically it shouldn't be much different, but there is something there.
Yeah. That's interesting to think about. I can't specifically say, I mean, would I be here today if I didn't have kids? I don't know. That's a really hard question.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
Who knows?
So, Kevin, what would you be doing different now? I mean, what do you wish you were doing different now at the moment in
If I
terms
could
of
just wave a magic wand.
wave a magic
and
wand
okay.
and, you know, spend more time with your kids or less time or whatever that
Interesting.
is?
I do think I would like to, if I could, if I could choose the what this moment looks like. It's a few years down the road after, you know, in my mind, the startup gets to a certain level. Maybe there's a bit of a hockey stick. Now, in my naive mind, I think hockey stick means, oh, I get to relax more, when I know kind of in my gut that means probably relax less.
Probably,
But,
yeah.
you know, all the fears of whether this, you know, is this actually going to work, et cetera, are gone by then. And I have maybe in my, again, naive mind, figured out a way to manage, you know, I have more people to help. So I'm thinking maybe I can manage that better and take a little more time with my kids, because I do think I'm going to need to, especially as they get into their preteens and teenage, a time where I want to be available for them in terms of actually giving them time out of my day, more than I am
They
now.
they might not want you to be available to them at that time.
That's true too. Well, there's a great,
Right.
yeah. So there's a good, I think it's an interview with this guy. He's a clinical psychologist named Gabor Mate, I think his name is. I'm not sure how to say his name, but his whole theory is about like, hold your kids close, especially when they don't want you to, because if you don't, they will be either going to be, they're going to be either civilized. I don't know if, I think he uses a different word than civilized, but they're going to be like raised either by you or by their peers. And when they're raised by their peers, that's when you see a lot of bad stuff happening. So he talks about like his teenage daughters really not wanting to be around him, and then him taking them on this like week-long hike in the mountains with just him and his daughter, and like creating that bond back again, and how important that was. So no, I agree. I think I should be ready for that too, when they say, Daddy, I hate your guts, leave me alone, stay away.
Well, all right, Kevin, get real with me. What are some things that you would do differently? Let's say you sold your company for, I don't know, $100 million, and you're like, I can retire now. What would you do what would your day look like?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, in reality, I fear, if not know, that I would probably start something. I'm kind of a busybody in that sense. So,
Okay. Oblige me though for a minute. Let's say you didn't start anything else.
Let's say
You
I
were
didn't
like,
start. Okay.
I'm just going to be with my family. Or consider, or maybe you decided I'm going to take a 2-year hiatus from work.
Okay.
Right.
I could see
and
that
then I'll
happening.
start something else.
Yeah,
You know?
I could totally see a 2-year hiatus. And if I did that, I would be off, you know, at this moment right now, I probably would find a place. I'm thinking like a Portugal, maybe parts of Italy that are comfortable, kid friendly, Spain, who knows, and just live an enjoyable kind of just existence. Maybe
and
maybe some other place.
And your day to day, what would that look like? Wake up in the morning.
Yeah, wake up in the morning and just like read, take lots, you know, I'd probably be just spending a lot of time with the kids. Yeah, I think I would probably, and I'd probably take them out of school for a little while and just kind of do my own kind of homeschooling a little bit and try to teach them stuff. I would be down for that. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. Are there any elements in your mind you didn't give me every little thing that you would do different.
Yeah.
But are there any little things that you would do that you could do now if you just put a tiny bit of effort in?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think if I was retired young, I would probably make breakfast for my kids every morning.
Okay.
You know, and why couldn't I do that now?
Yeah. Why could you do it? Right. Exactly. I think I would probably do one thing that I probably would do a lot more of is get them involved in activities that I've right now. Like I know my daughter's starting dance, and summer just passed, so dance is great. We're doing that once a week, but like my daughter's, I took my daughter to swimming lessons during before COVID started, and then COVID happened, and we stopped all that. And it's just like I just was so busy this summer that we didn't get around to doing swimming, and that would be something that like I regret. Like I really wanted her to learn swimming and get lessons, and it just didn't happen this year, just because I was like, we're really busy right now. Let's hold off a little bit. So stuff like that, I think I would volunteer more. You were talking about coaching, and you're doing some coaching, like.
I did.
That'd be something
I did some
that I'd like to
coaching
do
this spring.
Yeah. So stuff like that, I think where it'd be fun to kind of get them involved in different activities, introduce them to different sports activities, outdoor stuff. And I would be, in my having this time, I would have a lot of time to be able to go do that stuff, which would be great. So
right.
What about yourself? Anything? So breakfast is one. Anything else?
Yeah, I would read more than I do.
Yeah.
I would probably try to go, take my kids or my family out and do more things like hikes or bike rides, that kind of thing. Right. And these are things that I could do now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
This is where I'm going with this is if we had all the money in the world and we didn't have to work, what are some like basic day-to-day things? Of course, we would travel the world and do a lot of really fancy, expensive stuff. But the basic stuff, I picture a life where I would do these things, like make them breakfast more, read more, go on hikes or bike rides, stuff like that. That in my mind is like, well, I don't have time for that right now. Maybe after my business really takes off, I can take more time off. Then I can do it. And then you can kind of reassess. This is the discussion I had with my friend today. It was like, well, why can't I do a lot of that stuff now?
Yeah, good point. It's a good question.
Set aside the time.
We've kind of had a few starts like that where we'll start kind of like, okay, here's a plan. Like about 2-3 months ago, because we just moved up to this kind of more woodsy area, there's a lake about 35 minutes away. And we bought a paddleboard. We went out there on a Sunday, and we had an incredible time. It was just like so relaxing. I was like basically floating through this lake. The dog was on the board with me, and I was just meditating for a little while. And then the kids got on. We were having a great time. And, it's like we had a great day, and we said, okay, we're going to do this every week now.
Yeah.
And so we tried this for about, it lasted about 3 weeks, maybe a month. And then we're like, well, let's do it every 2 weeks. We kind of spread it out. And then, it's been a while since we've gone out now. So this is, I think it's hard for us right now. Maybe there is a lot going on to be as consistent as I'd like. But to your point, there's also just excuses. And there's been days where we could have easily gone out. We just had to get our butts out the door, really. So there's stuff where we really could take more action on that. And I think what you're pointing to is don't let some false narrative about I'm not there yet prevent you from creating the life and living the life that you want to live now. I mean, there's a lot you can be doing that you're not doing. So
I know, because are you ever going to be there? When your business does the hockey stick, right? Then you're not going to, I can tell you now, Kevin, you're not going to be there. You're going to be like, okay, well, we're on track. We're going to sell this company in 5 years. And that's when I'll relax. And then what if it takes more than 5 years? Then you'll have 10 years when you'll look back on your life with your family and think, and you'll be unsatisfied. Right.
Right.
So,
and we also assume that that 10 years is ours to have. I mean, again, one thing that I follow is stoicism, and it always is a good reminder, like, you may not have a tomorrow, you may not have a next year. I was working last night downstairs in our remodel downstairs, and I hear all these trucks in the middle, 9 or 10 at night. I go out, I look out, and my neighbor is being taken to the ambulance. And, he's an older gentleman, but still I still have yet to find out what happened, but it was just a good reminder of, like, every day is precious. So don't take it for granted, especially when you're in the midst of having kids and there's a lot going on and you're in this middle-aged era of life. It's its own privilege to get to experience that. And it may not always be easy. There's rocky times, but it's a beautiful experience at the same time. And it's easy to, just tell yourself you got to work all day. So.
Yeah, it's, I heard this, I can't remember where I read this. It's been a while, but I read this thing that said that middle-aged people who have teenagers, now I'm middle-aged now. I think you probably are too.
Yeah.
But we don't have teenagers. We have small children. So, but they were saying people who have teenagers, the divorce rates are higher among spouses.
Interesting.
It's sort of like I think the trend kind of peaks a few years after marriage, and then it goes down, and then it peaks again at this point in time, because this group of people, they had learned to be part of a team with a shared mission of taking care of these little kids, which is a lot of work, and you're just constantly doing that. And then as soon as those kids get old enough where, like I said, they don't want to be around you, they prefer their friends over their family, and they're always out a lot, then you start then you have to have a relationship with your wife at that point, and and so that's kind of one of those things where it's like, make sure that you can start with a relationship, or you start dating again,
Yeah.
kind of like, all right, now we can actually focus on each other, but we are two different people at this point, because we've been through 10 to 20 years of raising little kids, probably that's, by that point you might be close to empty nester, but you know what I mean. 10 years of just like raising kids, and that changes you,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
having kids changes you a lot.
Well,
So
it's a good point too, because I mean, you always think as a parent with little kids, well, we don't have time for dating right now. We don't have time for each other. We're just gonna, carry on, stiff upper lip. And it really shows, to your point, like how important it is to maintain that connection through those years, because it will not be that way forever. And you will have to eventually be on the couch together and have something to talk about. So,
yeah. Yep. When I was, I can't say that I've figured this out, but a couple of years, actually, it was the year that my wife and I went to Thailand. We only had one kid at that time. And we left him here in the States with family. But we went to Thailand, and that was my first time. I had like the Gmail app on my phone, and I'd get notifications whenever they would email me, and might be watching a movie or something. I'd get this notification. I would pull out my laptop. I'm like, I'm just going to take care of this real quick, and pretty soon I've worked for like 2 hours next to my wife on the couch. Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And she didn't really complain about this, but when we were in Thailand, I was pretty well off the grid, and it was so refreshing just to not have that. So when I came back, it's really hard to not have your email app on your phone, let's be honest. But I did just turned off all notifications pretty much for everything. Actually, I don't have any notifications for social media or the email or anything like that. And that's been really good, because now I can just kind of sit, watch a movie. I'll read these emails when they come in the morning, take care of it.
That's a great tip. I mean, that's such an easy win too. I mean, it just literally press a button, toggle that switch off, and now you have peace back in your life. I will do that today, because that's
getting emails. It's almost like a dopamine hit,
Yeah.
just like social media. It's like, oh, what's somebody saying to me now? And
Yeah.
the nature of email is we don't expect a response right away,
Right.
especially nights and weekends.
Yeah. I mean, Slack has become my new. I think you probably turned off your Slack as well on your mobile
I
or
I
whatever you
have it
use.
off for certain things like this microconf network that we're both
Okay.
part of.
Yeah.
I definitely have those
Turn
turned
that off.
off.
Sure.
But I do have it on for civic review, like employees, but
Okay.
it's pretty quiet when
That's good.
we're outside of
That's good.
business hours. So
Nice. Yeah. It's not for me because I have developers on the other side of the country or that world. And so I'm always like, oh, wait. So maybe that's a great tip too, is like if I could maybe set up my notifications during a certain period and then just shut them off. That would be nice. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, sometimes it takes going off the grid. And actually, I went up to a trip a couple weeks ago to Nevada to meet an old friend there. And my wife, her phone didn't work, so I had to give her my SIM card effectively. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going the old-fashioned way, And it was great. The whole, I was forced to not have anything to look at, and it was like living in the 90s. It was wonderful. Good reminder.
Those glory days, the 90s,
Yeah.
they were pretty great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
So any updates on the business front?
Yeah, so we have, let's see, a couple different things. I finally feel like I'm getting progress with hiring a new developer. This is something that I've been trying to do for months, and I may have complained about it on the show, but it's just been really difficult to find someone who has shown up, whose consistency, has a competency, and is smart. I've had just so many false starts with people that just like they claim they can do everything, and then they barely know how to like set up a local environment on their laptop, and it's like I'm baby stepping them through stuff, and they just flake off because it's too hard for them. I finally was able to get two folks that they're in kind of like that. I guess I'll call it the testing phase, the probationary phase. One guy is from Bangladesh, and one guy is from let's see, I can't remember. It's a North African country that I'm totally forgetting the name of. But anyway, so he's good. Both of them seem pretty good at the technologies we're using, which is Laravel. And they're both like showing up. They're both actually asking questions, and they're getting stuff done, and tasks are now getting completed. And so I'm excited about that because I was worried. I was like, I only have one great developer right now, but like if he were to leave, where would I be?
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to get at least a solid second developer on the project. So
what are you doing to test these guys?
Well, I used to have a bunch of stuff, and now just because of lack of time, I'm basically like setting up our development environment is pretty hard. It's kind of complex. So if they can get past that, then I just give them a few easy tasks that should be pretty straightforward. And if they figure those out, I'll give them harder stuff. And they're also getting work done for us. So that's.
Are you paying them for
Yeah,
this work?
exactly. Yeah. So I will hire them. I'll have them sign a contract. I kind of just let them know it's sort of like an NDA kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Not that that's enforceable, especially across, we'll enforce this in Pakistan or something. It's not going to happen. But, it's just sort of like a gentleman's agreement or whatever. It's like handshake, like, hey, don't do this. And so that's been good. And so far, just giving them like simple projects has been a good, thing to vet whether they're capable of doing anything. And if they mess up, I delete the branch that they committed to, and it's all good. So
yeah,
straightforward. Yeah. So that's the main thing.
So what are you going to do? Hire one and
say
ciao to the other?
It's a good question. I'm thinking maybe right now just giving them about 10 hours each a week, because that's kind of, they're part-time anyway. And so they want probably about 20, but probably about 10 hours each. And we'll see how that goes. Then, I guess in a month or two, I'll evaluate if I can keep both of them. I'll keep both. And if I can't budget wise, I'll let one go, whoever's not working out. So that's that. I'm excited because we will finally be making some progress on some of these big projects. I mentioned last time the quiz feature, and we're finally putting that into place.
Yeah.
And that's a big monster to take care of. And then the integration side of things, having someone focused on that is going to be really nice. So I'm excited.
So what does your development team structure look like now? Do they all report to you on an even horizontal structure, or
pretty
do you have
much
these guys? Yeah, they report to you.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not there yet. I mean, I have the guy who is my primary developer. He's built most of the app, probably 75% of it. So I typically kind of use him to, vet other people's work. I have them do pull requests into his main develop branch, and he can kind of like look at their code and say, hey, this is not looking right, or this guy's not using the right approach. So he's typically good. He has a lot of ownership of the project, so he really doesn't want bad code going in there. But beyond that, I'm the manager. I'm assigning tasks.
Right.
And my main goal is to try to take one day a week and just fully dedicate 8 hours or whatever to reviewing stuff and assigning stuff in our project management system, and just setting up the whole week of development so that I don't have to like follow stuff too much the rest of the week. And so that's been one way, as we were saying earlier, to be able to balance family and this. So
yeah,
so that's hopefully continue to work out. But yeah, that's about it on updates. Those are the major updates. I think we're there's stuff to talk about with marketing, but maybe I'll say that for next time due to our limited time, because there's some interesting things we're looking at for that.
I'm excited to hear about it. We are almost out of time. So
what about you? Let's hear your updates, and I'd like to hear how the shows have been going. How conference swag, I remember that was something we talked about.
We are we went to a conference last week here in Utah. So fortunately we didn't have to fly to it. Me and this guy Easton, we went together there to represent Civic Review, and there's a new competitor in our space, pretty well directly competing with us, and they came in with a bang, and everybody was talking about them. And
oh geez,
and we're just like, what about us? We're here, did you forget about us? And
that feeling.
Yeah, and I had been really worried leading up to this, and even at the show I was a little bit worried, but by the end, I mean, I feel like they probably got more leads than us. But at the end of the day, you just got to put your head down and focus on what you're doing, know. And since that conference, well, it's only been 2 business days since that conference, but nothing has changed. We don't have people that are like backing out of a conversation with us to go with them. And frankly, these guys are naturally going to focus on Utah first, and they're going to be around here. And whereas we are, Utah is just one of 4 different states that we are traveling to for these types of shows,
right?
Nice. And we're trying to branch out geographically and capture more states. So,
are they behind a little bit in terms of if you said they're just starting out? I would imagine they're a little behind in feature sets and stuff like that.
They have some features that we don't, and we have some features they don't.
Yeah,
so
kind
it's hard to say if you're behind or not. I think I have definitely talked to more customers than they have. So there is an advantage there, but any company can catch up there pretty quickly, so.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've heard something that I really liked about competitors, which was, and you have to be careful with these rules of thumb, but like the idea being really be more customer focused versus competitor focused. And it's a hard thing to do, because the temptation is to like watch, well, what features do they have? But what's more important is what your customer is saying they want, not what features someone else thinks is a good idea. And then you spend a bunch of time replicating.
Exactly. Yes. There's one feature they have that is really cool that we don't have, that I'd never thought about building. I don't want to go into too much details about what it is, but I've talked to a lot of customers and done a lot of sales pitches, and not once has somebody asked
for that
to have this tool that really highlighted a lot.
Okay,
like,
interesting.
look, this is so cool. You can do this. And
Yeah.
so somebody thought it was neat.
Yeah.
And maybe customers think it's neat, but the question is that really going to motivate customers to buy that feature?
Right. Right.
Or is it really even going to, there are features that help customers buy, and then there are features that build the moat, and protect yourself from competitors. And
Right.
those are kind of features that they don't ask for, but that delight them, that make the difference. They're both important, but I don't see this one really being either. So, I have talked to enough customers to know that I don't have to look at that and be like, oh yeah, we got to build this too, because they have it, right?
Exactly.
But I do. It does create a little bit of a sense of urgency to build features that I know we're missing, that our customers have been asking for, because now there's this new competitor and they are rapidly innovating. They have three co-founders, and so they just have way more resources than I do too, just from the get-go. So hopefully in the end it'll make Civic Review better, actually having a competitor like this in this
I think so. We even in our dental business, we had a recent competitor show up about 1.5 years ago, and they basically copied everything. Our website copy basically was just like taking all their pricing was from ours, all our plans. Like, okay, well, I wonder where they got this. But I have to say that in the recent 6 months, I went and visited them, and they've innovated on new ideas that I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that. And now I've started to take ideas from them. So it's like, you just have to be, like I said, there's no hard rule to this. Like, the idea like ignoring your competitors, that might sound good, but it's not practical. You do have to watch both your competitors and your customers, and you can get great ideas from your competitors. Why not? I mean, the open-minded idea is probably the best approach in general.
So I'm trying to keep the right positive attitude and just let it force me to innovate faster than I have been, because I feel like we've been a little complacent in terms of product improvements over the last 2 years, let's be honest. And so I think this will be a great motivator for that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, good. I like the way you're looking at that in a more positive spin about what it could do for you, instead of the initial defensive, like, oh, get away from my market.
I'd be lying if I said I hadn't felt those feelings either. So,
well, they're natural. So cool.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, and we'll look forward. We can chat more maybe about some marketing stuff next time, and I'd like to hear more about other findings from your conferences. So
looking forward to it. All right. See ya.
All right. See you next time.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more by visiting dadswithstartups.com. Please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/Dads with Startups. Until next time, bye.